And welcome back to this week's episode of ShatterCast. Today we have some fun things planned, talking more about Marvel because we all love Marvel except for Brian. He's more of a DC fanboy, but we don't need to talk about that right now. Derek, I have a question for you.
Yes, John.
When Bucky goes to get his coffee, what is his favorite drink?
I'm not sure, John. What is it?
A cappuccino.
Oh my gosh.
And here's a follow-up question. Where does Captain America go to get his coffee?
I don't think I want to know.
Starbucks.
Tim Norton's. Tim
Hortons.
Tim Hortons. I said Norton's.
Oh, I should have. That would have been better. Just like Tim Hortons. Tim Hortons is really good. Moving on.
It's Canadian.
Dang it. I was all about the pun, but not the anti-joke. Well, thank you for being here for these terrible jokes, and we'll catch you after the intro. And here we are back. Today, if you couldn't tell, we're going to be talking about Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Spoiler warning, all the spoilers. If you have not seen the entirety of the show and you want to see it without finding anything out about what you haven't heard, don't watch this until you finish the show. Then come back and watch it. Trust me, it's going to be a lot of fun. We will be talking about, again, the entirety of the show, including the last episode, all the spoilers, what our thoughts are for what's coming next with these two characters. Yeah, so again, this is your last chance. You've got about 10 seconds to leave before everything just spills out of my mouth. So I'm very excited. I thought it was a good show. And we got a countdown. You got about 4 seconds. And I'm telling you, there's going to be a huge spoiler as soon as that last pinky goes, oh my gosh, it did. Falcon is now Captain America.
What?
If that, kind of wasn't obvious, but
we're kind of at the same.
It starts with him giving up the shield, so who knows,
Well, if you didn't watch the first episode,
Wait, I thought
you
John
wouldn't have
Walker
known.
was Captain America.
Oh my god.
Some people have commented we're kind of at the same place where we were at the end of Endgame, where Sam has a shield. There you go.
He has confidence. And a cool new suit.
He's got the outfit too going with it.
And he trained how to use it. With his trees and
that's
stuff.
Smart. That's smart.
That was fun. Oh man, I've got a lot of thoughts about the show, both good and bad. There were things I didn't like. There were more things I liked than didn't. I will say I enjoyed this show more than WandaVision. And I enjoyed WandaVision. Okay. So I'm just tossing that one out there. I feel like there's two people that immediately disagreed with me, but that's okay. That just means we've got a great diverse cast here for the podcast. So I'm not going to open though, because I open everything. So Hannah, why don't you start us off? What did you like about Falcon and Winter Soldier? What'd you dislike?
I think the best thing about Falcon and Winter Soldier is throughout the movies, throughout this whole franchise, they've been sort of minor characters. And this show really allowed us to get to know them better and appreciate them more. And it makes me more excited for the other shows like Hawkeye's show and Loki's show, which Loki was already pretty highly appreciated, but like Hawkeye gets a lot of crap. But I'm looking forward, like just the precedent that has been set by these miniseries, where they're able to expand on these characters that aren't necessarily the forefront characters, like Iron Man and Captain America. And it's really cool to see more of the story, because I think my sister told me that Falcon went from being like sort of a character she didn't really care about to one of her top 3 in the Avengers. And so this show, I think, does a great job at expanding on these stories without it feeling like too much in a movie format. And that was probably my favorite thing, is learning more about these guys. They have great chemistry. When I first saw the title, I was like, why are they putting these guys together? Like, I get they have a connection to Captain America and Steve and all that, but Like it
It's
seems
been
very
such a
weird.
friendly rivalry too, you know.
Yeah.
Like Bucky, I forget. I think it was in Winter Soldier, where Bucky was like, "Hate's a strong word. I don't hate anyone." And someone's like, "What about Sam? No, I hate Sam."
But yeah, and the cast is great, which we already knew from the movies. But I forget which actor said it. One of the actors that plays a minor character in the show said that watching Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan work is like watching a master class in acting.
High praise. It's high praise, and I agree. The way they play off each other is really really well done. It reminds me of one of the reasons I love Captain America: Civil War so much is the chemistry between Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. is there. It's 100%. They sell the whole premise of Civil War because the actors work really well together and play off each other really well. And I think that the same is true of Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan, to the point where I wish we actually got more banter, but we ended up with like 2.5 episodes of them giving each other the silent treatment, which was a little unfortunate. That was probably one of my least favorite things about the show. While it made sense, I feel like they could have tied it up a little bit quicker and given us more of the banter and the we're actually buds kind of feel. Because you only have 6 episodes to work with. It was shorter than WandaVision, so that would have been probably one of my complaints. Something that I loved, however, Zemo. I really like Zemo. Even just from the comics, Zemo is one of my favorite characters in the MCU. He's like a semi-villain version of Tony Stark in that he's super egotistical. He's stupid rich. And I mean, there's in the episode, like he's walking around in a bathrobe eating Turkish delights, like the whole nation of Wakanda wants to kill you, and he just, I don't care, everything's good, you know. It's just his sort of laissez-faire attitude that is really admirable in the face of certain death and adversity. So, Derek, Brian, what are your thoughts? Okay, Derek, why don't you go?
Sounds good. I thought it was a solid show. I would definitely give it a B. I liked it. There's some things I liked, some things I didn't. We'll get to some things I didn't in a bit. Things I like. I was really excited by the premise of this show. I really like Sam and Bucky as characters. I love their banter, as we've talked about in the movies. So I was just excited when they announced the show. When they showed the original trailer for the show, I was like, I don't know if it's hitting the tone I'm looking for. Then they did the Super Bowl trailer. I was like, yes, when they're doing like the stare-off contest. Because again, I think these characters are best when they're doing the banter. And so I was like, I want more of that. So we got some of that. As John just said, I felt we needed more. But yeah, I like these two characters. So I love what Hannah said. One of the things I love about these Disney Plus shows is that we get the opportunity to see more supporting characters stand in the spotlight. So really love that. I love the production values of this. From the very first episode when Sam's doing his flying sequence, that lasted a lot longer than I was expecting. And it was like movie level quality. So
it was. They spared no expense.
Yeah, so they threw a lot of money at the show, which I really liked. And I also found that it was interesting that Marvel is not shying away from some of the kind of racial topics. Some of their approach, I could see how some people might think it may not have stuck the landing for a few things. We talk about that a little bit later. One thing, and I'm just going to take a quick minute to expound here. Yep. I really love the story of Isaiah Bradley. If you guys don't know, that story comes from the comics where they were experimenting on Black men with the super soldier serum. And I loved how they brought that to life in this. That was one of my favorite parts of the show. I think it was one of the things that they did well. Kind of just talking about the racial things. If you guys don't know, quick education period, that whole storyline is based on what happened in real life in the Tuskegee experiment, where it started in the 1930s, lasted till the 1970s, where they experimented on 600 Black men with syphilis. They did not tell them about it, did not give them treatment, even though a few years later we knew that penicillin could possibly help, because they went to see how it impacted the community. And people died, went blind, passed things on to their wives and to children. And it's a really dark point in history again. We see that happening in a few other incidents that happen in America. But that's one of the reasons certain communities, especially communities of colors, don't always trust the government, don't always trust medical advice because of things like that. I say all that because they incorporated all that into a comic book storyline, which they add to the show. And I thought they did really well with that. And what I loved also the dichotomy, we have Isaiah, who his character arc pretty much was, look what the government did to me, look what this country did to me. I don't care what happens to this country, kind of like they're not fighting for me, why would I fight for them? Versus Sam, who's kind of taken this idea that, hey, no matter what, I'm going to fight for this country, even if people don't always, agree with me or like the way I look, and hopefully they'll come alongside. And to see the two interact was great. And I love last saying how at the end, Sam made sure that Isaiah got recognition. He had a statue. He was part of the memorial. And just bringing it to real life, I think a lot of people just want acknowledgement of bad things that have happened in the past and want recognition. So there you go. That's my spill off my soapbox. I thought they did that storyline great. There you go.
I think, like, to add to your point, Derek, you also have Sarah in the mix, and what she's currently dealing with, and how that's affecting Sam and playing into Sam's relatability, and the fact that he's not just this superhero, and despite the fact that he is this superhero, he's still struggling with these things and things that his sister is going through. And I think, not to negate what Sarah was going through, but I kind of feel like you got the three different levels of, like, you talked about the contrast between Sam and Isaiah. I think somewhere in the middle, Sarah is there as well, and you've got a wide range that you see of these kinds of struggles.
Yeah, they definitely didn't shy away from it at all. And I remember that scene in the bank where Sam and Sarah went to the bank, and that's real life. And it was the same thing when Isaiah was telling his story. I actually had to pause it because Hannah can attest, I got emotional because everyone knows I love history, and there's some really bad things in history. And when he started sharing that, I was like, this actually happened. Like, this is real life. And I'm glad they didn't shy away from it. So thank you, Derek, for explaining it for our audience, because it's something people need to know about. And
I didn't even know about that, so that's interesting.
There you go. What about you, Brian?
Real fast, I think that's also one of my frustrations. We don't get taught a lot of this in American history because it's not a good look. There's other stuff that the government has done. We know that around 1940s, they experimented on some people in Guatemala with giving them STDs on purpose. And there's 2 years that happened. And there's other stuff that you find out about history, and it's kind of all connected. So I think, Brian, that's the point. A lot of the stuff we don't learn in history, and I think we need to learn about it so we don't repeat it. And we can also understand why certain communities feel certain ways about the government. There you go. All right, back to good stuff, Brian.
Well, I don't want to say I feel the complete opposite than everyone else, but I definitely feel like I liked WandaVision better, just me personally, because, like, don't get me wrong, the action was beautiful, all that was great, but I don't know, the story was weird for me. Like, I didn't really understand the whole Flag Smashers, like what their whole trying to do. Like, they wanted to go back to what it was before, but why? Like, I don't know. Maybe I just need to rewatch it because I was watching it after I got off work, so I was probably really tired. I didn't really get it.
I will say to that, if you notice, as we talked about everything we loved about this show, we never brought up the actual plot of the show, like the main plot, because it was kind of stale. Like, Harley, like, she was literally the same character she played in Solo.
Yeah.
Yeah, Enfys
She was
Nest.
Enfys Nest all over again, and just a bad version of Enfys Nest. And yeah, so I mean, we're probably in the same boat. I would
If
say
it helps Brian, the basic like understanding that I got from it was all of these people are people who were dusted in the blip, and then when they returned 5 years later, they were displaced, and they weren't happy with how the governments were handling the fact that they were now refugees.
Right. I mean, it makes sense, but like, I don't know. Based off the posters with Zemo and all that, I was expecting like Zemo to be the bad guy, but it turned out to be the good guy. So
Right.
that's kind of why I was kind of disappointed with Zemo's character. I felt like he was just a meme character. It's like he had the weird dance scene thing. It was like, why is this here?
They released us like a longer cut of
An
that.
hour
Yeah,
long.
there's like
Happy.
a whole video of him going.
To Brian, to your point, don't feel bad at all. And as Ham's explaining, I think the negatives, if we're going to shift to negatives real fast, I think the bad guys, the antagonists, they weren't
Yeah,
well
really
thought out.
important. Yeah.
They were all over the place. I feel like they were trying to paint almost everyone with a shade of gray and try to get us to feel for them. And I feel
Right.
like that didn't land. And my understanding and I might have got it wrong from Carly, because I had to go and research again because it didn't make sense. I think when people were dusted, the world came together, but now that people are back, those people who like occupy certain things are now getting pushed out. And so I think that's why Carly's upset. The issue that we're having right now is they did not make that clear enough. So that's why we're even trying to debate what her motivation was. So I agree with that. I like Zemo as a character. I thought he was quirky, but again, as a villain, it didn't make sense. Or why would you trust Zemo as much as Bucky and Sam did? Should we even talk about Sharon Carter? I feel like her character story arc, I was like, what are you doing? There's one fan theory, if we have time to get into it, about why she changed. This might be spoilers for something that will happen. I might bring it up later. But anyways,
why she went like turncoat and became the power broker, like.
Yeah, that felt a little weird. I mean, I think the fact that she's been living in Madripoor and doing all of these things just to survive, I get that lifestyle change. But then like just the immediate trust and no background check or anything to just be like, all right, you're a secret agent again. Like, okay. Like it's one thing to be like, all right, you're welcome back. It was like, okay, you're welcome back. You're not an enemy of the state anymore. But like to just suddenly give her that clearance is felt a little weird to me. But I think all of the things that we've talked about so far just goes to show that they did try to cram a lot into this show. Various characters, various plot lines, setting up things like John Walker being U.S. agent and things like the Flag Smashers.
And he had a little bit of redemption in the finale.
Yeah.
I was okay with. I liked that.
But I think, and all the stuff with Isaiah, all the stuff with Sarah, and then of course Bucky and Sam doing their own things. I think there's good things and bad things about the fact that they crammed so much into there. There's good things in that it allowed them to balance the heaviness with the lightheartedness. Because as they've addressed some really serious issues in this, like American history. But then they also have the banter, which we talked about loving so much. And I think if they didn't have so many plot lines going, they would fall a little flat to have the mixture of the lightheartedness and the heaviness. And I think with so much going on, it can get a little muddled, but at the same time, it allowed them to have a better, more balanced storyline, a more balanced feel to the overall show, I think.
I agree with all that. And just real fast, some other things I felt, I love the banter. I felt like sometimes it fell flat and they needed more of it. I feel like the show
felt forced to me sometimes.
Yeah. I feel like the show would have been best if it was like Mission Impossible, going around to different places doing stuff, meets Lethal Weapon, like a buddy cop movie, and we didn't really get a lot of that.
We got like a little bit of each, but it didn't really.
Correct. They didn't stick the landing. The other thing is, I thought Sam got some really cool character growth. I thought his fighting scenes were amazing. Everything he could do with the shield, the wings,
the combination,
all that stuff. I loved
Cool.
The thing I loved about Captain America 2, Winter Soldier, is that they gave Cap his own fighting style. That if you go back and look at Steve Rogers, the way he fights is different. They gave that to Sam, which is great. I feel like Bucky got shortchanged. I love Bucky's character, and I feel like he became a supporting character in his own show. And I felt like even for like a lot of the battle scenes with Bucky's the Winter Soldier. I feel like at least he should at least be able to take 2 of those super soldiers down by himself, because he's got also a vibranium arm. And almost every fight, Bucky's like struggling. I'm like, come on, Buck, like let's do this. So, anyways, and real fast,
wanted to elevate Falcon, and I think that because of that, he did get the sort of supporting character treatment in this show.
Yeah.
And I loved that. I loved when they were digging into a little bit the layers of him reliving the past as a Winter Soldier, and his combination with the older man and him killing his son. I wanted more of that, and so I think this is a good lesson. They were elevating Falcon, which is great. I love that. But you don't have to decrease Bucky to do that. I think you could have done both, and they didn't do that. So,
and along those same lines, when the Dora Milaje came for Zemo, and she just like boop, 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 and his arm fell off.
Wait, what?
Did you know they could do that? And he looked hurt, like emotionally hurt, which I actually really like that, because in the first episode you see that moment where they help him with the mental conditioning that had been put onto him and breaking him free of that. And so like he was emotionally invested in like that nation and those people, and he felt hurt because he realized that he had hurt them. And she called him White Wolf, and we know that's a thing, that's an actual thing. So it'd be cool if they continue expanding his character outside of Falcon Winter Soldier, and maybe we see a transformation from Winter Soldier to White Wolf. I don't know.
Yeah, because he doesn't have the Winter Soldier name anymore. He would say, "I'm not the Winter Soldier anymore," and he can't just go by Bucky.
Yep.
Even though they put Captain America and Winter Soldier as the end credit.
Oh yeah.
Right.
I just wanted to emphasize the Captain America part, which is a great example of them kind of decreasing.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll kind of get back in the good graces with Wakanda and be the White Wolf that we all want him to be.
Well, why don't we talk about our faith point?
Yep.
So I think.
If you like to segue us into that, then go for it.
Sure. We one of the biggest things with this storyline is all about Sam and Bucky trying to figure out what they're supposed to be, who they're supposed to be, and they're getting a lot of information and a lot of opinions from a lot of different sides, and they both go on their own journeys of figuring that out, and in the end they end up realizing that not everyone's opinion needs to be held so closely, that we don't really need to be so concerned about what people are going to think if we do this, or what people are going to think if we do that. And it's nice to consider those things, but like the biggest example was Sam being concerned about, I want to do this. I want to take up the mantle that Cap trusted me with, what Steve trusted me with, but what are people going to think about me donning this suit? And in the end, he came to terms with that and realized, there are going to be people that don't like the fact that I'm doing this, but I feel like it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I think that's a great segue. There's a couple of verses in the Bible we had talked about. One's Proverbs 29:25. And it says, the fear of man brings a snare, but whoever trusts in and puts his confidence in the Lord will be exalted and safe. And so I think that both Bucky and Sam were dealing with, what will people think about me? Bucky, who was a Winter Soldier, who killed people and had this conditioning, as John was saying earlier, he's now been freed of that, but he's still living through that trauma and that reputation. So he one of the things I actually liked about Endgame is I think he didn't mind Captain America giving Bucky the shield or giving Sam the shield, because I think he didn't feel worthy of it, and that's part of his psyche. For Sam, as Hannah was just saying, he didn't know if people would accept him as Captain America, and so both Bucky and Sam are dealing with, what will people think? And I think sometimes in real life we're worried to step out and to do greater things because we're worried about what people around us would think, what will our family think, what would happen if I step out and fail or lose or something. And I think what we can learn is that if you're following God, don't worry so much about what people say you can't do. God says you can, because he's by your side. There's one other verse that we have down, 1 Corinthians 1:26-27. It says, remember, dear brothers and sisters, the few of you who are wise in the world's eyes, or powerful or wealthy when God called you. Instead, God chose things this world considers foolish in order to shame those who think they are wise. And he chose things that are powerless to shame those who are powerful. And so I think this idea that God often chooses those who feel like they're less than, to elevate, so that he can show, hey, I can use anyone to do good. And so I think for both Sam and Bucky, they both proved that they were heroes because of what they were willing to do. And I think in our own lives, we can be heroes. We can help other people if we're willing to not let doubt or fear hold us back, if we're willing to step out and take a chance and take a risk to try to follow God.
Yeah, I immediately think of the Bible story of Moses and the specific piece of his life where he grew up in the Pharaoh's family. He was adopted by the Pharaoh. He was well respected. He had anything his heart could desire. And then when he felt like God was calling him to rescue his people, he had to make a difficult choice to step away from that. And not only what would his family think, but what would the people of Egypt think. And that was a really tough thing for Moses to step out in faith and do. And it ended up saving many lives as a result. And he did have several difficult conversations with his family and the Pharaoh, who was at the time like revered as a god. And so the thoughts, I can't help but imagine what was going through Moses's mind when he was
well, I mean, he questioned God's wisdom in using him, right? He was
He's like,
himself.
who am I? I can't speak eloquently.
And he's like, you want me to go talk to Pharaoh? I can't even talk correctly.
Right.
He had a stutter. And so he was like, why would you send me? This doesn't, like, pick somebody else, So it's a perfect example. I mean, he was so wrapped up in his own perceived personal flaws that he couldn't see God using him to deliver God's people, right? And so, that's a reminder that, like, what are you allowing to get between you and what God is telling you to do? Mm-hmm. Because it's only in between you and what God's telling you to do if you allow it, right? So Moses was so focused on his stutter, this thing that he had lived with his whole life that he was ashamed of, this thing that brought him doubt and insecurity, that he almost missed the most important thing God would ever have him do. And God didn't care that he had a stutter. God didn't disqualify him because of his insecurity, or because of his personal fears. God was like, I picked you. I'm using you. It's going to be you, Moses. Just get with it. And so in my life, I have to examine the things that bring me those feelings of worthlessness, or those feelings of I'm not good enough, or I can't because, what is that because? And then I need to just let that go, and that's not easy, and that's not something I can do in the blink of an eye or the snap of a finger. I'm not Thanos. I can't just get rid of my problems in an instant, right? but I can pray. You know, people ask, how do you give things to God? How do you lay them at the cross, right? These are wonderful Christian sayings, but practically, how do you do that? How do you actually give something to God? And for me, the thing that helps the most is to just tell God, like in prayer, actually, like he knows what I'm going through, but by telling him, by sharing it with him, that burden slowly starts to get off my chest. You know, when I tell him I don't feel like I'm good enough, almost always I'm reminded of scriptures that tell me that I am. When I tell him about the things that drive my insecurity and the things that make me feel like I can't do whatever it is that God has told me to do, he reminds me, I called you. This is what I'm telling you to do. I don't know better than God, you know, and insecurity is a liar, and fear is a liar, and doubt is a liar. And so, you know, that's why, bringing it back to Falcon and Winter Soldier, I was actually Team Bucky in the first couple episodes. I completely got why he was angry, and I was like, Falcon, how could you do this? You should have kept the shield, you know. But I get it. I get it because those voices inside of ourselves are so strong, especially when they're being echoed by the people around us. You know, when people are telling us the same things that we're insecure about, it magnifies it. And that's why we have to be careful, like you were saying, Hannah, the start of what you were saying. We have to be careful with whose voices we elevate in our life. You know, whose opinions we elevate. Who are we giving such high regard that they get to speak into our life? Not all opinions are created equal. You know, so okay.
That's 100% of why he uses people that have insecurities like that. So like with Moses and his stutter, he couldn't rely on his own will. He had to fully rely on God and his faith. So that's why God uses people like that, because he doesn't want them to, you know, get in their own self like, oh, I did this. Like you have to fully rely on God to get you through those kinds of moments.
Yep.
But that's also how we are as Christians. You know, we are persecuted as Christians. Like being a Christian nowadays, it's not as bad as other places here, but it's still, you know, people are like, oh, how are people going to feel that I'm a Christian? But, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Bible says we are going to be persecuted and people are going to disagree with us.
Yeah, it'll say you'll be hated for the message you carry, right?
So like,
it's expected.
It's easier said than done, but we are going to be persecuted. So
yep,
you just got to own it, you know?
Yep. I like it.
That's all I got.
I guess that was like 6 minutes of us in like a really nice way of saying toughen up. which isn't what we're saying. What we're saying is, you know, the way that we feel about ourselves, while the emotions themselves are valid in that you shouldn't be ashamed of how you feel, because that's just going to create a spiral, but they may not be true.
God is stronger.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And so while I feel doubt, and it's a strong emotion, and I can't just flip it off like a switch, that doesn't mean it's true.
Right.
And so I have to go back to God. I have to go back to Scripture. And when I feel ugly and overweight and all this other stuff, I have to remind myself that I was knit together in my mother's womb.
Right.
I am beautifully and wonderfully made. Right. And so you have to speak these truths to yourself, because the world is going to lie to you every day, all day. So we have to speak those truths to ourselves and not let those false perceptions kind of take over. Derek, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I think that's good. Just what everyone just said. Be careful who you're listening to. Make sure you're listening to the right voice, which is ultimately God, and do what he says. And don't sell yourself short. Don't disqualify yourself, because God loves and delights in equipping people to do amazing things. So trust in him.
Amen. Well, there you have it. Thank you for joining us. for this conversation about Falcon and Winter Soldier and the perceptions and thoughts and ideas that come from all around us. We hope that you're doing well and that your family is doing well. Remember, we here at Shattered, we love you. More importantly, God loves you. We'll see you next time. Take care, guys.
I had a question though, like if Cap and Bucky can't get drunk, can they get the effects of caffeine?
Probably not.
Superhero science, I'm not sure.
It's all about metabolism, so I feel like that would also sort of nullify the whole caffeine thing too. So yeah, that's up to you.